Please be seated. We'll show that the witness is back on the stand. Both assistant state attorneys are present. All for defense counsel and Mr. Rodgers. You may begin your proffer.
Before we start the proffer, I realize that one of my answers that I gave you.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sir, you just have to wait for a question.
Okay.
Mr. Wright, you have testified that your concern with regard to the Sievers family was the safety of the children. Is that correct?
I said a concern, yes.
A concern. And specifically, is it your concern that Mark Sievers wouldn't get to see his children if Dr. Sievers were to go forward with the divorce?
Well, I would have sympathy for that situation because I wasn't able to see my son for 10 years. So I sympathize with that, but that's not a reason that I would feel like somebody deserved to be killed.
No other questions? Any from the state for the proffer?
None from the state.
Okay. Any further argument you want to make?
I've made my argument as to what it goes to. He has a long-standing relationship with this family. He knows Dr. Sievers personally, and this includes what could be considered some bias and motive in helping out his friend or having something against Dr. Sievers. That's for the jury to decide.
Okay, I'm sustaining the original objection as I did at sidebar. I don't really see how it's relevant. And to be blunt, he's already an admitted murderer, and I don't think any additional motive would really even matter, and he's already testified to what his motive was.
I would just note for the record, my client is not an admitted murderer.
Well, what would his motivation have to do with your client's motivation?
This is about his motivation.
I believe that's already been established. Bring the jurors out. Please be seated. I'll ask our jurors again, have you followed my instructions, not talked about the case among yourselves with anybody else, or look up any of the people or places involved? Even if you did so inadvertently, now would be the time to raise your hand and let me know. For the record, no jurors lifted their hand. Counsel?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Describing yesterday the attack on Dr. Sievers. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes.
Okay. And you were describing Dr. Sievers being hit in the head numerous times with a hammer.
Yes.
Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. And is it your testimony that these were overhead blows? By overhead, that it was coming.
I don't believe that's what I said, but
Okay. Was that your observation or not?
no.
That was not.
Some of them were, but no.
Pardon me?
Some were.
Some were. Okay. And would you agree that the murder of Dr. Sievers was a frantic, frenzied, or panicked situation? Let me rephrase that. That wasn't very clear. Was a frenzied or panicked situation because the plan wasn't going correctly?
Yes, the murder wasn't a frenzy. How it happened was.
In fact, there's not much. I'm sorry. And was it your testimony that immediately after Dr. Sievers was subdued or dead, you left?
Yes, there was a little bit more detail that you didn't allow me to explain, but
So, would you, your plan between you and Mark Sievers didn't include a hammer, did it?
no,
In fact, it didn't specifically include any sort of weapon,
no.
a specific weapon.
Mark had suggested using a gun, but that was never an option for me.
How come?
I don't use guns. I have a felony. I don't own a gun.
But you do commit murder for friends.
Unfortunately.
So, it's your testimony that you were acting as a hitman, is that correct?
Objection. There's no such testimony.
Overruled. He can answer.
In your opinion, I'll rephrase it, in your opinion, were you acting as a hitman for Mark?
No.
Objection. Objection is to the witness's opinion.
Sustained as phrased.
Were you in fact acting as a hitman for Mark Sievers to have his wife murdered?
No, because I believe a hitman is a professional killer who kills for money only.
And did you not have an agreement to be paid in some fashion for this?
Yes.
You weren't in fact paid, were you?
You say we're not?
We're not, correct?
No.
But you did embark on this plan in a very public way, would you agree?
I'm not sure how to answer that.
Well, I'll ask it this way. You told your friends and family that you were going to Florida the weekend of June 28th and 29th, 2015. Is that correct?
Prior to this being the plan, yes.
And once this became a plan, you didn't suggest or cancel or think, boy, that doesn't sound right, does it?
Objection. First that's asked and answered, and counsel's testifying.
I asked a question.
Overruled.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I asked if that was, in fact, a good plan to not go that weekend, essentially.
It was a horrible plan.
Okay. And would you agree it would have been, if someone knew that they were going to commit a murder, it would be rather ridiculous to take pictures of the trip?
Objection.
Correct.
Calls for speculation. Facts not in evidence.
There are evidence.
Overruled. He can answer.
Would you agree?
Well,
Yes or no?
it would depend on what the pictures were being taken of. But yeah, it was part of the reason that I told him not to bring his phone. And I didn't have a camera or a phone with me.
But Jimmy Rodgers did.
Yes.
Would you agree buying souvenirs for your girlfriend and her children would also not be a good idea if you're on a trip to kill someone?
Jimmy believed that he would never be a
Objection,
suspect.
ask yes or no.
Sir, you just need to answer the question. And
I would
the state will have
not.
an opportunity to ask you further questions.
Sorry.
You made a comment yesterday that it was your intention to hide in plain sight. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And what does that mean to you?
It's blend in with the surroundings
By spending the day at the beach, correct?
and in a crowd, yes.
Going to places where you know you believe there will be video and other surveillance, correct?
Yes.
Renting a car in your own name, correct?
Yes, but that was because of my vehicle being crashed.
You testified earlier that you returned to Bonita Springs, Florida for the funeral of Dr. Teresa Sievers.
Yes.
Did you see her children there?
Yes.
Give them a hug?
Yes.
Did you tell them you murdered their mother?
No.
No further questions.
State.
Mr. Wright, you had a discussion with counsel about your prior criminal history before this case.
Yes.
Has the state offered you any plea negotiation or negotiated plea on any case other than this case involving Dr. Sievers?
No.
And all the cases that you had were not in Florida, right?
Correct. And nonviolent.
You talked earlier about some of your maladies, and you mentioned some mental health issues that you've had.
Yes,
Do you take medication for that?
I do.
Even right now, while you're in custody, you take medication for it?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about your planned trip to Florida briefly. You did legitimately have an issue that you had to come to the Sievers practice to resolve?
Yes, it had to be done by, I can't remember the date, but it was August.
And had you planned to come down to Florida to do, I think you mentioned an upgrade or something that needed to be done?
Yes.
Did you tell people that you were planning to come to Florida to do the upgrade?
Yes.
And when you told folks that you were planning to do that, was that before or after Mr. Sievers contacted you and told you, hey, we're going to be out of town on Sunday the 28th?
It was before.
So before you knew that you had to come down to Florida to kill Dr. Sievers, you had already told people you were coming down to Florida?
Yes.
So what happened when now you've told people that you have to come to Florida to do the computer work, and now Mr. Sievers wants you to come to Florida to kill his wife the same weekend? What did you do?
Well, I stopped telling people I was coming to Florida, but I didn't say that I wasn't going on a trip, which is what I should have done. But
I mean, there's a lot you shouldn't have done,
yeah.
right?
Yes. It's an
Agree
understatement.
on that?
It's an understatement, yes.
Your discussion, you told us, and you told counsel about after Mr. Sievers told you he wanted his wife to be killed, you then engaged Mr. Rodgers and asked for help.
Yes.
Was there anything frenzied about that discussion?
No.
Mr. Rodgers agreed to help you?
Yes.
Was there anything frenzied about that?
No, it was a multiple conversations over a month period.
Was any of that frenzied?
No.
Then, as you told us yesterday and then today as well, you traveled down to Florida. You drove the speed limit or close to the speed limit coming down here?
Yes.
There's nothing frenzied about the trip?
No.
And at the time you drove down here to Florida, Mr. Rodgers knew you had already agreed to come down here with you to kill Dr. Sievers?
Yes.
There's nothing frenzied about that, right?
No.
And after you arrived in Fort Myers, you told us that you went to the Sievers medical practice to, I guess, kind of scout things out to figure out where it would be best to kill Dr. Sievers.
Yes, while we were out at Walmart.
Was there anything frenzied about that?
No.
When you first arrived at the Sievers home, and you told us that morning, I think you used the word poke. You poked around in the house.
Yes.
Anything frenzied about that?
No.
And was all that part of the plan to kill Dr. Sievers?
It fit into the plan. Specifically, the reason was just to scout it out to make sure that things Mark told me were going to be prepped were actually the way he told me.
And just to be sure, when I use the word plan, not just the plan between you and Mr. Sievers, but was that all part of the plan between you and Mr. Rodgers?
Yes.
And then when you came back to the house and you got suited up into the blue suits that you told us about yesterday, was that frenzied?
No.
And when you taped up your wrists and taped up the ankles,
Objection beyond the scope.
no, the term frenzied was used more than once during direct
Overruled.
cross-exam. When you taped up your wrists and your ankles in the blue suits to kill Dr. Sievers, you and Mr. Rodgers, was there anything frenzied about that?
No.
Was there anything frenzied about him bringing the blue suits and the hammer and the cooler to Florida?
He didn't bring a hammer with him, but as far as what else he brought, no.
I'm sorry, the hammer, there was a hammer that he had in the garage. You told us he joked about being Destiny.
Yeah, it was something Mark had in the garage.
Dr. Sievers' Destiny.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Anything frenzied about that?
No.
In fact, he was making light of the situation.
Yes, it was made to be a joke.
When you rented the white Hyundai Elantra and drove it down here, did you expect to be found out by the police?
No.
And when you went shopping in the Walmart and stopping for gas, going to Fort Myers Beach, did you expect to be found out?
No.
Did you expect the detectives, Lieutenants Downs and Levitt, to knock on your door in Missouri and want to talk to you about this case?
No. At least not that soon.
Thank you.
Defense.
I don't have any more questions for this witness.
Should this witness be held locally for recall or no?
The state doesn't intend to recall Mr. Wright.
No objection.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Have both sides approach for a moment. State.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would introduce into evidence business record certification and notice of intent, State's Exhibit number 59, which is the business records for Delta Airlines. I previously.
We'll show them admitted.
And also at this time, introduce into evidence State's Exhibit number 60, I'm just going to confirm it's 60, Your Honor, which are the business records from Bank of America.
Just previous business records exception. Objection.
Previous objections noted for the record, overruled. We'll show it admitted. The next witness will take at least an hour, so I don't want you guys to starve. Why don't we have you come back at 1 o'clock? That gives you about an hour and 20 minutes. And I'll ask that you not discuss the case among yourselves or with anybody else, or look up any of the people or places involved, and we'll see you then. Please be seated. Anything else from the state before we break for lunch?
Nothing except I will show, I think defense knows, for those discs that we introduced into evidence, we've also printed off pages from them so that when we go back to the jury for State's Exhibit 60, which is the Bank of America records, is 60B, which is a single page, which contains the check. And for the Delta records, we've printed out the pages, which now I can't remember how many I counted, 14 or so. And that would just be 59B, but I wanted them to look, they have looked at them, I just wanted to before. And there's no reason to do that back in front of the jury, that would just be what goes back with those exhibits.
Okay. You need a moment to look at those?
I think they're not familiar with those. No new objections, just a single objection.
Noted for the record, we'll show the B exhibits admitted so that they can go back to the jury instead of the full exhibits.
Just numbering wise, I think Mr. Brazil has an issue.
Yes, we called everything else A and B, so we can call these 59 A and B. and
Yes,
60
sir.
A and B.
So you want me to add A's to the discs?
Yeah, just so everything is,
Have no objection. Okay.
Makes sense. Anything else from the defense before we break for lunch?
No, Your Honor.
I would just ask that the state, if you haven't done what I asked you to do at sidebar at the end of the day yesterday, talk to your side just because of who's coming next.
You did that, I did that myself this morning.
Okay. We'll see everybody at 1.